Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your heart? That's exactly what happened to me and Sarah. If our story resonates with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to hear more real stories like ours. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories are born from the most difficult choices. I still remember the exact moment I realized I was in love with Sarah. We were sitting on the hood of my car at our favorite lookout point, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She was laughing at something ridiculous I'd said, her head thrown back, eyes crinkled at the corners. The fading sunlight caught in her dark curls, creating a halo effect that made my breath catch. "What?" she asked, noticing my stare. "Nothing," I replied, but inside, everything had changed. Sarah and I had known each other since college. We started as study partners in our economics class, then became friends, then best friends. For 3 years, we were inseparable but platonic. At least, that's what we told ourselves. My father, Richard Montgomery, was a self-made businessman who had built his company from nothing. He had very specific ideas about my future, including who I should marry. In his mind, strategic alliances through marriage were still a thing in the 21st century. He had his eye on the daughter of his biggest business partner, Melissa Harrington. "James, the Harringtons are coming for dinner next weekend," my father announced one evening as I helped him organize some files in his home office. "Melissa will be there. I think it's time you two got to know each other better." I sighed, already knowing where this was heading. "Dad, I've told you before, I'm not interested in Melissa." "You barely know her," he countered, not looking up from his papers. "She's smart, well-educated, comes from a good family. The Harringtons and Montgomerys would make a powerful combination." "I'm not a business merger, Dad." He finally looked up, his steel-gray eyes meeting mine. "In this world, everything is business, son. Even marriage. Your mother and I had an arranged marriage that worked out?" "Yeah, I've heard that story." I ran a hand through my hair in frustration. "But Mom's been gone for 15 years, and you never remarried. Doesn't that tell you something about marrying for convenience instead of love?" A flash of pain crossed his face before his expression hardened again. "Your mother's death has nothing to do with this. I'm thinking about your future, about the company's future." "Maybe I don't want the company," I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. My father stared at me as if I'd just confessed to a crime. "You don't mean that," he finally said. "This company is your birthright. Everything I've built has been for you." Guilt washed over me. I knew how much the company meant to him, how hard he'd worked to build it. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean it like that. I need to make my own choices." "You will come to dinner," he said firmly. "You will be polite to Melissa. That's all I'm asking for now." I nodded, knowing it was easier to agree than argue further. But as I drove to Sarah's apartment later that night, my mind was in turmoil. Sarah lived in a small but cozy apartment on the east side of town. Unlike me, she hadn't grown up with privilege. Her parents were teachers who had instilled in her a love of learning and a strong work ethic. She was working at a nonprofit while pursuing her master's degree in social policy. When I told her about my father's dinner plans, she listened attentively, curled up on her worn sofa with a cup of tea in her hands. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked when I finished. "Go to dinner, I guess. Be polite. Then continue avoiding Melissa like I've been doing for years." Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Your dad is persistent. He's stubborn," I corrected. "He thinks he knows what's best for everyone." "Maybe in his mind, he does," Sarah said thoughtfully. "He built everything from nothing, right? That kind of success can make someone believe they have all the answers." That was Sarah, always trying to see things from everyone's perspective. It was one of the things I loved about her. Enough about my family drama, I said, reaching for the remote. Movie night? She nodded, and we settled in to watch, sitting close enough that I could smell her lavender shampoo. I wanted to put my arm around her, to pull her closer, but something held me back. Fear, maybe. Fear of ruining what we had if she didn't feel the same way. The dinner with the Harringtons was as uncomfortable as I'd expected. Melissa was attractive and intelligent, I had to give her that. But there was no spark, no connection. We made polite conversation about her law career and my work at my father's company, but it felt like a job interview rather than a date. After dinner, my father insisted we take a walk in the garden, clearly trying to give Melissa and me some privacy. Your father is quite determined, Melissa said once we were alone, a knowing smile on her face. I'm sorry about that, I replied, embarrassed. He can be traditional. She laughed. My father is the same way. They're from a different generation. We walked in silence for a moment before she stopped and turned to me. Look, James, you seem nice, but I can tell your heart isn't in this. And honestly, neither is mine. I blinked in surprise. You're not interested in this arrangement? God, no, she said with another laugh. I'm actually seeing someone. My parents don't approve because he's just a doctor without a family fortune, but I love him. Relief washed over me. That's great, actually. I'm happy for you. What about you? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Is there someone else? Sarah's face immediately flashed in my mind. Yes, I admitted, the first time I'd said it aloud. Yes, there is. Melissa smiled. Then why are you here with me instead of with her? It was a good question. One that haunted me as I drove home later that night. I found myself taking a detour, ending up outside Sarah's apartment building. It was late, past 11, but I saw her light was still on. Before I could talk myself out of it, I called her. James, she answered, sounding concerned. Is everything okay? Can I come up? I need to talk to you. 5 minutes later, I was sitting on her sofa, trying to find the right words. How was dinner? She asked, sitting beside me. Enlightening, I replied. Turns out Melissa is in love with someone else. A doctor her parents don't approve of. Oh, Sarah said, looking surprised. That's good? It is, I agreed. It made me realize something important. I took a deep breath. Sarah, I think I'm in love with you. Actually, I know I am. I have been for a long time. Her eyes widened, and for a terrifying moment, she didn't speak. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. I've been waiting for you to say that for about 2 years now. 2 years? I repeated, stunned. She nodded, moving closer to me. I was starting to think you'd never figure it out. When we kissed for the first time, it felt like coming home. Like everything in my life had been leading to this moment. The next few months were the happiest of my life. Sarah and I fell into a relationship that felt both new and familiar at the same time. We already knew each other's habits, preferences, and quirks. Now we were just adding a new dimension to our connection. There was only one shadow over our happiness. I hadn't told my father. I knew he wouldn't approve. Sarah didn't come from money, didn't have the connections he valued. But more than that, she challenged me to think differently, to question the path he had laid out for me. You need to tell him, Sarah said one evening as we cooked dinner together in her small kitchen. It's been 3 months, James. I know, I sighed, stirring the pasta sauce. I'm just trying to find the right time. She gave me a look. There's never going to be a right time to tell your father you're not following his life plan for you. She was right, of course. But the conversation I was dreading came sooner than I expected. The next day, my father called me into his office at work. I had lunch with Harold Harrington yesterday, he said without preamble. He mentioned Melissa is engaged to some doctor she's been seeing. Did you know about this? Yes, I admitted. She told me at dinner that night. He frowned. And you didn't think to mention it to me? I figured it wasn't my news to share. He studied me for a moment. Well, it's unfortunate, but not the end of the world. There are other suitable matches. The Wilsons' daughter just graduated from business school. Dad, I interrupted, I'm seeing someone. He paused, looking surprised but not displeased. Oh? Who is she? Anyone I know? This was it. The moment of truth. Sarah. Sarah Chen. My friend from college. His expression changed immediately, hardening. The social worker? She works for a non-profit and she's getting her master's in social policy, I corrected, already defensive. James, he said, his voice taking on the patronizing tone I hated, you can't be serious. She's a nice girl, I'm sure, but she's not suitable for someone in your position. My position? I repeated. You mean as your son? Or as the future head of Montgomery Industries? Both, he said firmly. This company has a certain image to maintain. The people we associate with, the connections we make, they all matter. Sarah matters to me, I said, my voice rising. I love her. He scoffed. Love? You're 27, what do you know about love? This is infatuation, nothing more. I know that what I feel for Sarah is real, I insisted. More real than any arranged marriage you're trying to push on me. Enough, he said sharply. I've indulged your rebellious phase long enough. It's time you grew up and accepted your responsibilities. End this relationship with Sarah. I've already arranged for you to meet Jennifer Wilson next week. I stared at him, anger building inside me. No. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not ending things with Sarah, and I'm not meeting Jennifer Wilson or anyone else you try to set me up with. His face flushed with anger. Don't test me, James. I'm still your father, and as long as you work for me. Then maybe I shouldn't work for you anymore, I cut in, the word surprising even me. Silence fell between us, heavy and charged. My father looked as if I'd slapped him. You would throw away everything, your inheritance, your future, for this girl, he finally asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I'm not throwing anything away, I replied. I'm choosing my own path. If you can't accept that, then that's your choice. I walked out of his office, my heart pounding but my mind surprisingly clear. I had finally stood up to him, and it felt both terrifying and liberating. That evening, I told Sarah everything. We were at the lookout point again, our special place. You quit your job? She asked, looking shocked. James, you didn't have to do that. I didn't quit, exactly, I clarified. I just told him I would if he kept trying to control my life. But honestly, I've been thinking about leaving for a while now. To do what? I shrugged. I don't know yet. Something that matters to me, not just to him. I took her hand. The point is, I chose you, Sarah. Not because anyone told me to, but because you're the one I want. Tears welled in her eyes. I love you, but I never wanted to come between you and your father. You didn't, I assured her. This has been building for years. You just gave me the courage to finally stand up for myself. The next few weeks were difficult. My father and I barely spoke at work, communicating only when absolutely necessary. At home, I started looking for apartments, knowing I needed to move out of my father's house if I was going to truly stand on my own. Sarah was my rock through it all, encouraging me but also challenging me to think about what I really wanted from life. With her support, I started exploring other career options, even taking some night classes in sustainable business practices, something I'd always been interested in but my father had dismissed as trendy nonsense. 2 months after our confrontation, my father surprised me by showing up at my new apartment. I had moved out the week before, taking only what I had bought with my own money, leaving behind the luxury car and designer clothes he had provided. "Nice place," he said stiffly, looking around the modest one-bedroom apartment. "Thanks," I replied, equally stiff. "Would you like some coffee?" He nodded, and I busied myself in the small kitchen, giving us both a moment to collect our thoughts. "Your mother would be proud of you," he said suddenly, making me nearly drop the mug I was holding. I turned to look at him, unsure if I'd heard correctly. "What?" He sighed, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "She always said you had her spirit. Her determination. I see it now." I brought the coffee to the small dining table and sat across from him. "Dad, I never meant to hurt you or reject everything you built. I just need to live my own life." "I know," he said quietly. "I've been thinking a lot these past weeks. About you, about your mother, about the choices I've made." He took a sip of his coffee. "Did you know your grandfather didn't speak to me for 2 years after I started my business?" I shook my head, surprised. My grandfather had died before I was born, and my father rarely spoke of him. He wanted me to take over his hardware store. Thought I was a fool for risking everything on my fancy ideas. Your mother was the only one who believed in me." A sad smile crossed his face. "I've become my father, haven't I? Trying to force you into the life I think is best." "You were just trying to protect me," I said, feeling a sudden surge of empathy for him. "To make sure I had security." "Perhaps," he acknowledged. "But that's not my decision to make anymore. You're a man now, not a boy." He hesitated. "I'd like to meet her. Properly this time." "Sarah." I couldn't hide my surprise. "Really?" He nodded. "If she's important to you, then I should get to know her. Maybe you could both come to dinner this Sunday?" It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But coming from my father, it was a significant olive branch. "We'd like that," I said. That Sunday dinner was awkward but not disastrous. My father was polite to Sarah, asking about her studies and her work. She was gracious in return, engaging him on topics she knew he cared about, like education reform and its impact on business. By the end of the evening, I could tell he was impressed by her intelligence and passion, even if he still didn't fully understand our relationship. "She's not what I expected," he admitted as we stood in the driveway, watching Sarah warm up her car. "What did you expect?" I asked. He shrugged. "Someone less substantial, I suppose. She has conviction. I can respect that, even if I don't always agree with her views." It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was a start. Over the next few months, a tentative truce formed between my father and me. I continued working at Montgomery Industries but moved to the sustainability department, where I could pursue projects I believed in. Sarah and I grew closer, talking about our future together. 6 months after our confrontation, I asked her to marry me. We were at our lookout point again, the place where I'd first realized I loved her. "Sarah Chen," I said, kneeling before her with a simple but elegant ring, "will you marry me? Not because anyone says we should, but because I choose you, every day, and I want to keep choosing you for the rest of my life." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I choose you too." When I told my father about our engagement, he surprised me again. "Your mother's ring is in the safe in my study," he said. "She would have wanted you to have it for Sarah." "Dad, you don't have to." "I want to," he interrupted. "It's time it was worn again, by someone who is loved." The day I gave Sarah my mother's ring, replacing the one I had originally bought, was the day I truly felt like my father.